What's up, everybody? This is Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of Playing Solo Jazz Piano, with now a second edition with a ton more audio-visual content for you to watch. I'm also the author of Playing Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1 and Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2. Last time I'll say it on this channel, but if you're watching this and it's still kind of beginning of January, there's probably just enough time for you to sign up for my jazz piano classes. They're 32 session classes for about the price of 2 private lessons, and I always tell students it's way better than taking private lessons because you will get individual attention and you will be held super accountable in class, which kind of doesn't always happen in private lessons. So highly recommend if you're interested in getting serious about jazz this year. You can check out the deets at my website. Deets, that's the thing I say. jeremysiskind.com/jazzclass. And today I want to talk about something that comes up in the class and just comes up often. And people always have questions about it, which is the jazz device that I call a turn. So a turn is this really common kind of ornamental device in jazz that takes a few different forms. And so I want to do my best to clear it up a little bit and give you some advice in terms of how to employ it. So that's the plan. If you want to conceptualize the turn, think of the tune Joy Spring. It's just full of these turns. Right here. Ceora also has a lot of turns. Right. So, it shows up in these standard tunes, even Billie's Bounce. So, let's get down to business and figure out what's going on. All right. So, the first key thing to know about a turn is it only works going from a higher to a lower note. Or, in other words, if the melody is moving down. So, if you think about that example from Billie's Bounce, it's between this F to the D, which of course, the D is lower than the F, that we make our turn, okay? And the turns can either be triplets or 16 notes, and those two kind of function differently. So, in this turn, there's kind of 2 different ways to think about it. We could basically keep this rhythmic outline. So, or we can subsume that D into a 16th note turn. So, or so this is the first thing that starts to confuse people. Hopefully I haven't confused you already, is that there's 2 different ways to think about it. You could think of the turn just being this little 3-note group, or you could kind of think of the next note as being included in the turn. And you'll see it written and conceptualized and talked about both ways. So have a think on that. Try not to let it confuse you. Now, the way that I get students started on turns is that we'll play a descending C scale. And I'll make it just like quarter, eighth, and then more eighths. We can start in straight A's and then we'll see what it feels like when we swing it. And then we'll make turns on each note on the beat. And I'm going to do the triplet version for now. We're thinking really straight A's. Da, 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 ya, da, ya, da. And it definitely works better on the beat than off the beat. If I try to go, it kind of works. And I'll write that out for you just so that you can kind of see it. But I am much more prone to doing number 3 rather than number 4. Now it will make sense once number 4 is written out. So number 4 is showing you turns that are done on the offbeat 8th note. Doesn't sound awful. But I hear number 3 much more common. And in fact, if you think of like the melody of Joy Spring, my point there, I realized that I just kind of swallowed my sentence. My point is that the turn is on the beat rather than off the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I do believe that it is more common. So again, let me play 3 without swinging, and then I want to swing it for you. If I swing it, I still want to feel those. And you'll ask me, okay, so how exactly would you write it out? And I'd say, I have no idea. I'm sure somebody out there can do the math, but to me it's easier to feel it and to think about maintaining the authenticity of those 2 8th notes. Now, if that's a problem or if you prefer it stylistically, you can play these as 16th notes. And Clifford Brown comes to mind, and I know we've been talking about Joy Spring, which of course is a Clifford Brown classic, as somebody who makes his turns really, really straight. Now, it's not impossible, if we're going back to the C major scale analogy, to do just a triplet turn. In fact, if you think of Donna Lee kind of starts with this little triplet turn. Different, right? Because here, our outline would be different. Our outline would be do, di, da, do, do, do. All right. So the outline is really going to kind of determine whether you want to just do triplets or whether you're thinking more in terms of 16 notes. So get that clear, just looking at our outlines, whether you're doing number 7, oh, I didn't even make the outline, or whether you're doing number 8. This isn't the most organized presentation I've ever done, but hopefully you're getting something out of it. Right, so if you look at those two, the outline itself is very different. So if let me play you 7. If I add turns, it'll look like 6. Let me play you number 8. If I add turns, it'll look like something like 3. Okay, so now the question comes up as, how do I know what note to add in as the note that you turn in? In the case of the C major scale, it's pretty simple. You backtrack one note in the scale. So here, I'll let you see what I'm playing. That might be helpful. Right, I just go back one note in the scale. It's not rocket science, but of course you're not always going to be just playing a scale. So the first tip would be that turns are more commonly stepwise than not, but I will show you some examples where they're non-stepwise. I would first try a diatonic note, so a note from the mode. You can then, of course, try a chromatic note, the note a half step above. One place that I'm often working with my students on this is if we're doing an enclosure. Let's say we're in the key of C. I would most typically, and I want to add a turn in this enclosure, right? It is going down from D flat to B. I would most typically add the diatonic note in the key. I'm going to add that diatonic note. Right, we always are going to come back through that first note. And that sounds good. But it can be really fun to also add the note a whole step above. Also sounds really good. So you can really experiment a lot with what note stepwise you want to add. It gets a little bit more interesting. I'm all over the place today, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, so if we're enclosing the third, the diatonic note would be G, and it sounds plenty good. It's probably what I would do most of the time. All right, and this is the diatonic note because we're in the key of C major, so we're selecting notes from the key of C major. But it's also pretty cool. Oh, I wrote that as a D sharp before. I should at least be consistent on that. To do the chromatic note. Very funky. So, with turns, you can definitely experiment regarding whether you want to use a diatonic or chromatic note. You also can leap. It sounds like I'm saying you can do anything. You do always have to go above for it to sound like a turn. But let's take the same situation. I might leap up. Here, let me do it in red so you can see what I'm adding. So here's the original enclosure. We're in the key of C. We could add a chord tone. It's kind of cool. It's like a little yodel. So here's the normal one that's on top. And now the bottom one, which has a leap. Could try, what if we did it with a C natural? I'm honestly not sure how this is going to sound, but it could be cool. I think it is cool. Could I go all the way up to D? Yeah, it just makes kind of a really interesting effect. So that's something I'm just discovering right now, and I'm going to play around with. So how would I practice turns? First thing, I would practice that downward scale. And you could do it two ways. One is in eighth notes, the other is in quarter notes. So let's start with quarter notes. And now I'm gonna have eighth note triplets. If I play it in eighth notes, 16th note or that 8th note triplet. No, I'm doing badly. I'm tired, guys. Okay, so something like that. So I do that first, and then I would pick a melody, and I would figure out where you could add turns in the melody and practice it. Let me just show you a quick example that I know I can pull up quickly. If we go to, here's in a mellow tone. Now, there's a lot of this that I can't add turns to because it's ascending, right? I can't add turns here, or at least I personally have not figured out how. So it would be right in here that I would add a turn. And I would add the note above the G, go back through the G. Here's another spot that I can add a turn, right? I can't add it anywhere in here because it's ascending, but right here we have B flat down to F. So I'd probably try C first. But I'd also try C flat or B, which gives it a little bit of a bluesy feeling. It's all kind of fun to experiment with. Here's an interesting spot. So we only have one moment where we're moving down from B flat to A, but it's kind of a hold. But I could add a turn right before. And it could either be C or it could be C flat. Either one sounds good. I'm not sure I'm going to love the way that it sounds here, but it should kind of work. It's not my stylistically favorite place to add. But I would go through, a bunch of tunes, practice adding in turns, and then practice improvising, adding in turns. You could even play a phrase and then play the phrase with a turn. So you hear the difference? The first one is so I did a little turn there. Doing like one bar rest, and then repeat that same bar and add a turn. It does add a lot of, kind of appropriate, proper jazz style to your playing. So I highly recommend practicing those turns. I hope this video is helpful. If you got this far, comment with the word Galapagos, if you can spell it. All right, see you later.